Hi, welcome back. So a little bit of movement, yoga-based movement again for you today, and I'm going to be focusing a little bit on the lower body. So a couple of reasons why this has come to mind this week. I've been working with a few people online who have either started running under lockdown, or they have been running more, so suffering with hips, calves, hamstrings, ankles, those kinds of issues. So looking at a little bit of mobility for those areas, for that lower body area, and it's something that we can do in 20 minutes or so, which is what we're planning today. Second reason is that also been speaking to people who are finding themselves sat at makeshift desks that are trying to work from home, again feeling kind of quite tense and tight around the hamstrings and the hips. So we're going to loosen that off a little bit. Really good for a lot of the work that we do in calisthenics. It's going to really help with things like pistol squats, so as well as helping us to get into some of those inversions that we enjoy, and we might have a go at that as well today. So you don't need anything. If you've got a mat, then throw down a mat. Remember, nothing on your feet, so bare feet is good. I'm going to make a start over here. So just take a seat to begin with and find a comfortable cross-legged position. So you might just want to peel the fleshy bit of your bum away so that you can settle those sit bones down into the floor. I'm just going to turn side on for ease of demonstrating a fold that we're going to do in a minute. But just give yourself a minute just to come to the mat. Give yourself just a second to settle. Big breath in through the nose. Maybe let it out through the mouth. And all we're going to do to begin with is come into a straightforward, cross-legged forward fold. Now I say straightforward, but given it's the first thing we're going to do, you might notice how the hips, the knees and the ankles feel, and that's kind of the purpose of this initial fold, just to tune in to any niggles you might be carrying around the lower body. So fingertips onto the mat just in front of your shins, and I want you to keep your spine nice and long. We'll talk a little bit more about the hips in a moment, and why we want to keep that spine nice and long. So just have a think about kind of lifting the chest, extending the crown of the head away from the tailbone. All we're going to do is creep forward, so fingertips on the floor, try and keep the spine long, and you'll find that this is probably going to be quite a limited fold to begin with. It's the first one of the day. Your lower back might have something to say about it, your knees, your ankles, your hips. So you might be getting all sorts of feedback from all kinds of areas of the body, and that's fine. But what I want you to try and avoid doing is curving through that upper back to get into a lower fold, because that's going to take the stretch into the T-spine, into the upper back, rather than into these hips and lower back, which is what we're looking for. So think about nice long spine, and then just crawl those fingers forwards. And every time you breathe out, you might find you can just inch those fingers forwards a little bit, so you can try that. And then just take a couple of nice long deep breaths. So nothing too strenuous to begin with, just exploring that fold. How's that feeling? Walk those hands back up to the shins, and we're going to pop ourselves up onto the knees. So just checking in with the feet and the ankles. So come high onto your knees, and I want you to tuck your toes. So let's try and tuck these toes as much as we possibly can, which for me isn't that much. And then if we can, we're just going to sit back onto those heels and start to get a bit of a stretch into the soles of the feet. So just stay here for a couple of breaths, just taking that weight back as much as you're able. Now, we'll all feel a bit different here, and some of us might need to keep the weight forward onto the knees. So just sending that weight as far back as you possibly can. It should feel like a really deep stretch for the soles of the feet, that plantar fascia, the soles of the feet. And then we're going to pop onto the fingertips, flatten over those feet. So pressing the tops of the feet into the floor now. And then once again, we're going to sit back onto the heels. Now, if this is really uncomfortable, you can pop a towel underneath your bum. If it's dead uncomfortable for your ankles, you can pop a rolled up towel underneath the ankles. But if you're doing okay with those ankles flat onto the floor, with the tops of the feet flat onto the floor. You can just see about bringing your fingertips onto the mat behind your toes, taking that weight back a little bit, and then let's see if we can just peel the knees away from the floor so we get a nice stretch through the front of the ankles. How's that? Let's pop back onto the knees. We're going to plant those hands and come onto hands and knees in a tabletop position. So, taking the right leg, let's point that right leg out to about 5 o'clock. So pointing out to the side. Now it's helpful if you've got a bit of a slidey floor, just to slide the toes along. So you might want to pick up the foot if you don't. We don't want any carpet burns on the tops of the toes. We're just going to send the bum back towards the heels and just stretch out that inner thigh. So sending the bum back as close as you can. You should start to feel that on the inner edge of that right thigh. And then let's come back to centre. We're going to take that right leg, take it over the left. So on a clock face, you'll be pointed to about 7 o'clock. Same thing, we're just going to sit back nice and low. So send the hips back to the left heel. Should be feeling that on the left side of the hip. Feels good, feels pretty good. Let's come back to centre. Back into that tabletop. We're going to try the other side. So left foot is pointed to about 7. We're going to do the inner thigh first. So just slide that foot back. Get your bum back to your heels. Hold it for a couple of breaths. And then coming all the way back to centre, we're going to take that left leg over the right, point it to about 5 o'clock, and then we sit back again. So ease that weight back to the heel. Not going as far on my right side, so again you might notice differences between your right and left. That's normal, that's okay. Nice deep stretch for that right glute, that right butt cheek. And then let's come back to centre, and we're going to sit and just take the legs into a wide-legged position. So I'm not talking box splits here, just wide enough for you to start to feel a little bit of a stretch on the inner thigh, but not so much as you think you're at the limits of what's possible. And again, it's useful to just pick up the fleshy bits of the bum here and shift them out of the way. Now what you might find, and actually blocks or cushions can be useful here, I'm just going to turn side on again to show you. If your hamstrings are tight, what tends to happen is when we're sat on the bum, it pulls your hips, your pelvis backwards, and you tend to just like round through the lower back. So if you find that's happening to you, it can be useful just to sit yourself on something. So it can be a book, a folded up towel will do nicely. Elevating those hips a little bit allows this lower back to be nice and long. So if you find that you're sinking into that lower back, then just try and elevate the hips a little bit. So whether you're on something to just elevate the hips, or whether you're sat on the floor, still peel away those fleshy bits. And just have the legs engaged, so just drawing the toes towards the shins slightly. And again, we're going to come into a forward fold here. We're trying to find that fold at the hip crease. So again, if we start to fold through the T-spine, through the thoracic spine, we get a stretch through the back, but we don't get into these hips, into the lower back. So fingertips onto that mat, just in front of the body, and we're just going to inch forwards. So again, early on, might not be a spectacular fold, but that doesn't matter. It's all about just finding the edge of what's comfortable. As soon as you can feel a stretch on the inside of those legs, in that lower back, and just hold it there for a breath or two. Keep those feet active, keep drawing the toes towards the shins. Nice, good. So we're going to stay low, but we're going to walk the hands over to the right leg. So let's take a little walk over to that right side. Now if you can reach your feet, you can make a little hook of the first 2 fingers and thumb and just thread it around the big toe and grab onto the big toe. If you can't, it doesn't matter, just rest your forearm on top of your shin, maybe hooking onto the shin bone or onto the ankle with the forefinger and the thumb. Now whether you've got that bind with the toe or whether you're just resting the arm on top of the leg, doesn't matter, but we're going to bring the left hand onto the left hip, and notice how I've started to just open up the body. So my left shoulder is on top of my right, my chest is nice and open to that space in between the thighs. Now I'm just going to start to ease my right ear down towards my right knee. Now you can do that by just pulling on that big toe, if that feels okay, or just allowing the elbow to come onto the inside of that right leg. But notice that my shoulder stays high. The minute that shoulder starts to drop, we move that stretch again into the length of the spine. And what I'm trying to get into here is this lower left-hand quadrant of the back. So there's a big muscle there called the QL, which this gives a really nice stretch to. Now for those of you that feel dead comfortable in this position, you can take it a little bit further by taking the left hand all the way over that left ear and reaching towards the right toes. But again, make sure that shoulder doesn't drop. The minute that shoulder drops, we're changing that stretch all together. Let's bring this left hand down onto the inside of the right leg. We're going to stay low, but walk through all the way over to the left side. So same thing, if you can make a hook with the first two fingers and thumb, grab hold of it. Let's bring the right hand onto the hip and open up that body. Right shoulder stacked on top of left, chest nice and open. Let's just bring that ear a little bit closer towards that knee. Should feel it in that lower back, so right hand side this time. You've got the option to take the hand all the way over the ear towards the left toes if you want to. It's just an option. You choose where you want to be. Good. We're going to bring right hand down to the inside of that left foot, walk ourselves back into the middle, and let's just see how that fold's starting to feel. So you might find you can inch forwards a little bit, legs feeling a little bit looser, lower back feeling a little bit looser. Let's walk those fingers back up. We're going to take up the knees, bend up the knees, just engage the core a little bit while we're here. So if you can, we're going to grab hold of the soles of the feet and just lengthen out those legs. Now, if this feels too much for you, then you don't have to grab the feet. You can come into a high boat position. If you have got the feet, keep the chest lifted, keep sitting nice and tall, and maybe you can let go of those feet for a couple of breaths. Good. Let's cross the ankles. We're going to plant those hands and come all the way into down dog. And step that right foot through. Drop your left knee down onto the floor and flatten over those left toes. So we're just going to ease back onto the left knee and give the right leg a little bit of a stretch now. I'm just moving my hands to make that comfortable. Sliding onto the heel, pointing the toes towards the sky. So I'm starting to get a bit of a stretch into the back of that right leg. Some of you might be able to just drop all the way down onto that left heel, and that's fine. If you can, then you can drop onto that left heel. You'll give that quite a bit of a stretch as well. But if that's too much for you, then staying up on this left knee is just as good, whether you are down low or high on this left knee like I am now. Fingertips on the hips, we're just going to fold again at that hip crease. So keeping the back nice and long, and you'll really get a deep stretch into the back of that right leg. Now if you try it, if you experiment with letting the fold come from the upper back, from that T-spine, which is more habitual, you'll feel nothing in the back of that leg. So if you just try that, you'll feel a real difference. Keeping the body long, let's just fold over that right leg. Good. And again, if you're down here, exactly the same thing. We keep the back nice and straight. And then we're going to just bring our way onto the right foot, hand onto that right knee, keeping your right heel down. Let's just gently ease the knee over those right toes. So a little bit of work for the ankle, a little bit of mobility work for the ankle. Important that that right heel stays grounded. If it starts to lift, then just ease it back a little bit. Use a little bit of that body weight just to sink into that right foot, and if you need to shuffle the left knee forwards to make it a bit deeper, then you can, of course. Excellent. Right, plant those hands. Let's take the right foot back, coming into that down dog, just to swap sides. So step the left foot forwards, right knee onto the floor, flatten over those right toes, and we're going to sink back into that right knee and pick up the left toes and just find that runner's lunge, that big stretch down the left leg. So you decide where you want to be, down on the right heel or up on that right knee. Draw the toes towards the shins and let's take a little fold here. Really deep stretch down the back of that left leg. You should definitely feel this without too much of a fold. Use the fingertips just to support you if you need to. And then we're going to bring the weight onto that left foot. Hands onto that left knee. We're just going to ease into the ankle, so keep your left heel grounded. Just drive that knee forwards. I can really feel that into the lower calf. And if you need to shuffle that right knee forward so you can get a little bit deeper, then please do. Just make sure that left heel stays grounded. Excellent. So we're going to plant the hands, tuck the right toes, let's step back into down dog. And then look at the space between the hands, just tiptoe the feet into that space. Coming all the way forwards, forward fold towards the front of the mat. So bring the fingertips onto the shins and see if you can lift and lengthen into a flat back. And then as we breathe out, again, fold at the hip crease, belly towards the thighs, maybe wrap the arms around the backs of the legs. Just enjoy that fold for a moment. And then as we breathe in, we're going to take the arms all the way up to the sky. Look up to those thumbs, bring those hands down through heart center and take a big step backwards so that you're turning to face the long edge of your mat if you're using one. So nice wide legs. You can use your arms to measure how far apart your ankles should be. So you want your ankles to be about underneath your wrists. So if you need to shuffle closer or wider to do that, then please do. And we're just going to turn the toes to face the long edge of the mat. So toes are slightly out, maybe about 45 degrees. Hands onto these hips. We're going to come into a nice deep squat. So just sink low. And let's just take the right shoulder in towards the space in between the thighs. And then come back to center. Left shoulder. Back to center. Hands onto the inside of those knees. Can we go a little bit deeper? So right shoulder. Back to center. Left shoulder. Come all the way back to center. Let's bring the fingertips onto the mat and lengthen out those legs. So nice long legs. Now some of you might find that touching the floor is difficult. So again, use something, use a book, or if you've got blocks you can use a block just to allow you to rest the fingers on something in this fold. I'm going to come into a side lunge. So to begin with, just nice and easy, let's just let the weight drift into the left heel as we turn the right toes to the sky. And then coming back to center, let's do the other side. So drifting into the right heel, turn the left toes to the sky. Back to center. So just a couple more times, not too deep to begin with. Keep those fingertips on the mat for balance. And the next time we drift over to the left, we're going to see if we can go a little bit deeper. Now if you can, keeping that left heel on the floor, pointing those right toes up to the sky. Hold it there for a breath or two. And then let's come back to center. Let's go over to the other side. So right heel down, left toes pointing to the sky. If that heel lifts, it's not the end of the world, but if you can keep it grounded, keep it down. Let's come back to center. Now we're going to do that again. If you want to challenge the balance and just work on the leg strength a little bit, make a ball and socket shape with the hands, and we're going to use our legs to do the work. So we're drifting over to the left side, we're pointing those right toes to the sky. Driving back through center, other side, so sinking down into the right side, left toes to the sky, driving back through center. Now we can add one more thing, a little bit of internal rotation of the hip. So sinking back down, This time, take yourself all the way onto the bum and let that left knee drift in. Now you might need your fingers to help push yourself back up, or you might find you can drive up using the legs. You have a play around with that. So dropping onto the bum, let that right knee drift in, and then let's drive back up to centre. Should we do it one more time each side? So don't worry about using the fingers if you need to, that's not a problem. Last time on this right side. Nice. When we get back to the middle, fingertips onto the mat. Just allow yourself to drift into that forward fold. Now for those of you that are working on the inversion, if you fancy just having a quick headstand whilst you're here and whilst we lengthen through the backs of those legs, then remember to make a nice big safe tripod with the hands and the head. So we don't want them on the same line. Have them on the same line, we're going to make it much harder. So hands just in front of the nose, you should be able to see the hands. Lift those hips nice and high. And maybe you can peel those toes away. Have a play around. Coming back down with that nice wide-legged position. And we're going to heel toe those feet to mat distance apart. Let the tail sink and drop into a yoga squat. So again, heels down if you possibly can. Keep the spine nice and long. Let the tailbone be heavy. Just have a little move around here. Have a little rock from heel to heel. We're going to plant the right hand. Press the right shoulder onto the inside of the right knee and just sweep those left fingers up to the sky. You might feel that in the lower back. And let's swap side, left hand down, left shoulder onto the knee, right arm reaching for the sky. Let's do that one more time on each side. So right hand down, sweep those left fingers high, look up to that thumb. Good. Last one, so left hand down, sweep that right arm up, and back down to centre. Hands shoulder distance apart. We're going to hop those feet back into a plank position. Pausing in that plank for a moment, might as well just do a little bit of work for that core while we're here. So make sure your hips aren't sinking, make sure your bum's not high, squeeze the glutes, get the heels, the hips, and the head in a nice long line. And then we're going to drop the knees. Swing the legs around. And press the soles of the feet together. So, it doesn't matter whether you've got a big, loose diamond in front of the legs, or whether you work the heels really close to the groin. This is a stretch for the groin. So it's the only forward fold that we're going to do today, where we don't mind if the spine rounds. So interlace those fingers around the outer edge of the feet, and then just use your upper body strength, take the elbows wide, and let's try and draw the nose a little bit closer to the knees. Not to the knees, to the toes. And then coming all the way back to centre. Let's cross those legs. Take a big breath in through the nose. Big breath out through the mouth. And you are done. So, hope that worked for you. Quick 20-minute lower body flexibility and strength. So yeah, really good if you, like me, are trying to run a little bit more. And I hope you found it useful. Let me know any comments, anything else you'd like to see.